r/AskReddit. Serious dads who left and never came back. Why? Fuck it. No throwaway. I was 20 when my daughter was born. Living about 4.5 hours away from home, friends, family, and everything familiar. Never wanted to be a dad thanks to a pretty crummy upbringing. When things took a turn for the worse in the relationship, I bailed. I knew I couldn't survive up there on my own. Young, immature, crappy job, etc. So I left during a heated argument in the middle of the night. I kinda just escaped. I pushed her out of my mind and did things of my own accord. Paid child support when I could. Birthday presents, maybe a phone call every once in a while. There was no father/daughter relationship. When you're several states away and never see her, it's a lot easier to pretend she didn't exist. Having no connection, it wasn't the hardest thing to do. I lived my own life with not much thought about her. This went on for a few years. I made a move to the West Coast, and during a trip back home in the East, I took a visit to see her. I remember crashing on my ex's couch and being awoken by a tiny person she was 4 at this point. Me and her mother both agreed that I don't bring up who I am or try to play dad. Just spend the day with her and enjoy ourselves. It was incredibly awkward for me at first, but slowly, things fell into places. Watching her stumble in winter boots, listen to her relays, experiment with new food, lemon pop a seed muffin, dance while we wait for the bus. Thanks to an odd encounter with an employee at an American Eagle, she called me dad. Surreal moment where I locked eyes with her, then her mom. It felt warm and beautiful and loving. We both ignored the comment, but everything inside of me was raging with emotion. We spent the remainder of the day goofing around and assembling a bed. After we put her to said bed, me and her mom talked for a few hours. It was an easy realization for me. After everything that happened that day, I needed to be there. I'll skip most of the details, but the visit happened in October 2010. I made plans to live there by 2012. I moved back home from Cali, worked several jobs, saved, planned everything meticulously so I wouldn't be forced back. In December 2011, I made the move up north. Our relationship was essentially friendship for a few months. She didn't have a father figure in her life and I wasn't about to drop a "Hey surprise, I'm the dad you've been missing." In the beginning it was her coming over for a Friday night sleepover or random park trips. Figuring out everything and how to be a dad. It was intense and the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Still learning, as I think every dad never stops figuring things out. I eventually told her who I was, and it wasn't this big emotional moment. I was just her dad, and she was happy to finally have one around. She doesn't realize I was missing for most of her childhood, and it's a conversation I'm not looking forward to having. I'll be honest and upfront. Hopefully by then she'll understand how much I regret it. If not, then I'll work on patching everything up. Won't quit this time around. Our relationship is perfect now. I have partial custody. She stays with me half of the week. We have paint fights and bake cakes, play flashlight tag in cemeteries, etc. My life is amazing, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I can't hate on the deadbeat dad thing, because I was one. I totally understand the mentality of not giving a fuck about your kid, since I was a guy who had that going for him. I want to say it was immaturity and fear of fatherhood that held me back, but who knows? I'm sure it's different for everyone. I'm a deadbeat dad, but let me take a second to explain. I just shared this story on a similar AskReddit thread. I became a father in September 2013. I have only seen my baby girl once. Throughout the pregnancy, the mother and I had conflicting views on what we wanted to do. Maybe it was selfish of me, but I did not think it was possible for us to raise a kid at 17. I had too much growing up on my own to do. I played sports, was head of clubs, worked part-time, and was accepted into a prestigious college with honors. I was also suspicious because she was talking to her ex, and I had used a condom. I advocated for adoption. It escalated, and soon it got to the point where she told me either you are there 100% of the time, or not at all. This caused a huge emotional struggle within me. Do I give up everything I have worked so hard for? First family member to go to college, to raise my child in a toxic situation with the mother? I'm obviously biased, but I chose the latter option. Since that day, the mother has blocked all forms of communication with me. This has something that has always bothered me even 4 years later. I'm about to be a senior in college. I ended up going to college halfway across the country, partially because of the great program they had, but also partially because I wanted to get away from it all. As a sports management major, I have really redefined myself here. I have worked for the professional sports team here for 3 years. I have interned at a sports agency, and I have actually been working on starting my own venture. However, this whole situation hasn't failed to come back around to me. Just 2 weeks ago, I received a letter from the state government asking me to put my baby that I haven't seen on my medical insurance. Throughout this whole process, I, as the father, have been through hell and back emotionally. I love my baby girl so much, yet when I see the only picture I have of her, I feel nothing. There is no bond I have, because I have not been able to see her due to the mother and her wishes. I wondered back then if I was ever going to get out of this godforsaken town and begin my life. Turns out, it already had begun. If anybody out there is reading this, the advice I'm going to give you may seem hypocritical. Have sex. Do it. Enjoy your life. It is possibly the best feeling in the world. Just be sure that you are safe and you are smart. When you are faced with a situation as sensitive as this, you can either let it destroy you, or you can let it define you. Since this whole thing has happened, I have become an advocate at my school. Shared others my story. I hope one day I will be able to hold my baby girl in my arms and tell her I love her. That is all I ask. Edit. I know this post has hit a nerve with a lot of people, and for that I apologize. I realize that it isn't ethical, responsible, or noble at all what I did. At the time, as well as when I tell people about it, it has made me feel selfish, entitled, and a coward. I heard it all when I was 17 too. If anything, I hope that sharing my story will at least impact one person to do the right thing if they are in this situation, and do the right thing that I know I can't do. I answered Op's question. Typical story. I met a girl, we liked each other, had sex on the first date. She got pregnant. I was young, and she said she was on the pill. I learned my lesson about pulling out unless I'm wearing a condom, and then we moved in together. After a couple of months together, it was obvious we weren't going to make it, so we split amicably, I thought, and talked once or twice a week after. Well, she stopped letting me come to ultrasounds and doctor's apts. Didn't want me to come to the parenting class she was taking with her, and around the 7-month mark she ceased all contact. Now, I knew when the due date was, so about a week before I started calling, her phone was disconnected. I messaged on Facebook. I emailed. I messaged her little sister and even her little sister's boyfriend, all trying to get in contact with her. Well, 2 weeks after the delivery I get a call from her. She said that the day after her and I slept together. I went away to Detroit to catch a football game that weekend. She had one last romp with her ex, and it was his. Obviously devastated, I got off the phone. But we stayed friends on Facebook, and I watched this kid that should have been mine grow up. My mom asked me one day, about a year later, if I talked to her anymore or knew anything about the kid. So I pulled up my ex Facebook profile, and my mother and I were dumbfounded. The child looked exactly like my mother and sister when they were the same age. To a friggin' T. Same hair, smile, eyes and chubby cheeks that every baby in my bloodline has. So, I go about trying to get back in contact with my ex. I message her in Facebook, call the old number and email again. Her little sister had blocked me by this point, so I couldn't even get in contact with her. All I could do was send her a message on Facebook outlining my concerns and that I wanted a paternity test because the baby looked like my kin, and I had to be sure. I was raised big on family, so if I have progeny out there, I want to be involved in their lives. Well, I didn't have to wait long for a reply. It came the next day and went a little something like this. I don't care if you think the child is yours or not. I have a good thing going here. She got back together with her ex, and I don't want anyone coming in and ruining our family. She's happy and healthy, so please stay away. I didn't know what to do. I asked advice from my parents and friends. Some said to leave it, others said to go after her, and my best friend said I had dodged a bullet. so I sat on it for another 2 years. By this point, seeing her pictures, I knew, my heart of hearts knew this was my child. So I messaged again, this time a little more forcefully, and told her I was demanding a paternity text. I sent pics of my mom, sister and myself as a baby as proof. I wanted to be involved in my child's life and I would take her to court if I had to. Her reply wasn't as cordial this time. If you try and break up my family I will tell you. She basically admitted she was mine daughter, that the reason why mommy ran away from you is that you're a bad man who was in jail for inappropriately touching little girls. I'll tell her you used to hit me and that you hit the other children you have, which I don't have any. I will totally ruin you in her eyes, so even if everything is settled after court she'll never want to see you again. I wasn't to be deterred. I talked to a close family friend who was a retired family court lawyer, handled my parents' custody issues over me, and she said the cost of the court, the therapy, the supervised visits and integration therapists, for making sure her transition was smooth accepting my family as hers, was going to cost me around $300,000. Over the 4 to 5 years we would be in court, not to mention back child support and other bills I would be retroactively responsible for. I wanted to forge ahead, so I went and talked to another lawyer who confirmed everything that was said to me by my family friend, and I didn't know what to do. I just knew I wanted to be involved in my daughter's life. So I go back on Facebook to talk to my ex about everything I had learned, and she has either blocked me now or deleted her Facebook. I drove out to where she lived and she had moved. She up and left with my child. I do not know where she went, and what was worse, I lost the only way of keeping track that my child was indeed safe and growing up healthy as well. I'll admit, even though it's petty, I enjoyed seeing pictures of her shunning her father's attention. She never looked happy in pictures with him, not like she was scared or anything, just indifferent to him. It might have been wishful thinking or seeing what I wanted to see, but it's the little things that get you through something like this.